right, good morning, everybody. My name's David Cook. I'm just going to be kind of helping field the questions, and this is a topic that I'm very excited about. All of these gentlemen here have done a lot in different countries, put a lot of effort into everything from production to also the marketing side of things, dubbing, all kinds of different aspects that you could look at this. So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say and to see the questions that we have. I'm going to give each of them just a couple of minutes to just give a little bit about themselves. That'll help us kind of know what we're going to be hearing from, and then go from there. So Arturo, if you want to start.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everybody. Really an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And what I do is I work with Canción Films, and we do theatrical distribution throughout Latin America. That's our specialty. We also do production. We've produced a couple films, but what we really, our stronghold has been theatrical distribution throughout Latin America, as well as, and this is not on the foreign side, this is more on the domestic side, but we also do grassroots marketing towards the Hispanic community in the United States. We've worked on several films. We've distributed, I think, since Courageous, all of the Kendrick films. We've done the distribution throughout Latin America, as well as the grassroots Hispanic marketing in the U.S.
I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. John Grooters is my name, more on the production side of things. We've been a production company out of Holland, Michigan for 20 years, and so many of the projects that we've worked on have taken place in other countries. So we produce films. We also work on versioning for other countries, and so we're kind of on the production side.
Donald Leow. I started about 35 years ago from video. There was a clear distinction during pre-digital days where you do video or you do film. Today, everyone is a filmmaker, even if you have a cell phone, right? So, been doing this for a long time. From Singapore, crazy rich Asian country, but my wife and I dropped the rich. We're just crazy Asian, all right? So, you see? Anyway, look forward to sharing this time with you guys. I'm the owner of Stone Table Films. We've done 4 films here since moving to America 14 years ago.
Awesome. So lots of experience to draw from. I'm just going to start out with the first question here. It says, what is one of the most often overlooked aspects of producing foreign films?
I'll start.
Okay.
Okay. The story, because a lot of time we write a story from our worldview, but like I did a film in Mongolia, their worldview and our worldview is totally different. So if you don't do proper research about their worldview, about their culture, about their tradition, to me, you're going to make a Hollywood film that doesn't tell the truth.
To your point, Donald, how do you overcome that? So I'm a writer and director primarily, and so I think you're exactly right. And I had a screenplay recently that was going to be shot, and it's the history of another country. It's not my country. The country was Romania, and the film was to deal with their history, what happened in the 30s and 40s in their country. And I did as much research as I could and thought I had mastered all the nuances of Romanian culture. Turns out I missed a few things. It's crazy how that works. But it was a really good move that we did have one of the greatest historians in that nation, and I got a chance to meet with him, go over the script with him, ask him to vet the whole thing, and that was helpful. Another small aspect in that story, there was a Jewish wedding. I've done a lot of filming in Israel, thought I knew what a Jewish wedding looked like because I knew what a ketubah was. And so but with somebody else's good advice, why don't you run this past a Jewish rabbi? And man, I had so many things wrong. It was almost, it was critical that we didn't completely overlook that step. And it turned out that it completely redirected the way we wrote and shot that scene. So I guess the way to address that issue is to ask. Find the local historians, cultural experts, run your screenplay, buy them, or yeah, you can make that mistake.
And you know, jumping on that, respecting the culture, respecting the people there. You know, a lot of time we go there and we think, oh, we are the producer, we are from America, I'm the director, I know everything. No, we don't. You know, we know half of everything, right? And like one of the things David and I learned while we were doing the film in Mongolia was that, you know, the yet they call it a ger. There's half, one side is women and one side is men. We never know that. It's just one room, you know, and then thou shalt never cross over, you know. And we had problem with that, but we have to respect their culture, and in respecting their culture, we gain their respect.
I have one more thing to say. But Donald always inspires me. One little detail that might not seem maybe advisable, I suppose, but I'll tell you it anyway because it worked for me. Communication is an issue. The rest of the world typically speaks 3 or 4 languages. Americans don't even speak our own very well, and we assume that they will speak English. So there's a potential problem there. They probably do speak English. It's probably not their first language, and so we assume that the communication is always flowing, and it's probably not. And that's an issue in a lot of areas. You better have a working relationship with a foreign, someone from the indigenous country who you can communicate with. One thing we've done on a couple movies, and this is the weird thing, there's no more important relationship for a director, really, than their DP. I mean, the director and the DP are kind of arm in arm all the time. But the DP's main relationship is with the gaffer. The gaffer is inevitably going to be from the country you're in, as will that crew. You're not going to bring, more than likely, a gaffer and grip trucks and all that stuff with you wherever you're going, even if you're just crossing into Canada or Mexico. So you're inevitably working with a foreign crew, and they're going to speak the language. Well, if your DP is English and your gaffer is Romanian or Albanian or Mongolian, there's a potential miss that could happen right there, and that can lead to some frustrations. The DP said, I asked for this, they put up this, the schedule's behind, they hate each other, bad words are being spoken. So what I've done is hired 2 DPs. Weird, I know. But I have worked this out in a couple of occasions, and it's been pretty cool, where I've got someone that I maybe have worked with for 20 years or more, so I know I can communicate. We can talk the same, not only English language, but sort of cinematography language. And then we also hire the best DP from the foreign country. And it takes a humility on the part of those DPs to be willing to be. So if you watch Sabina, the movie we played here last year, you will see director of photography, you'll see 2 names. An American named Mark Chamberlain, who's from New York, a Romanian named Silviu Stavala, who was the DP of the year in Romania. I don't know if it would always work. If it wasn't for Mark and Silviu, maybe it wouldn't. But that was because Silviu could speak to the gaffer in their language, and the communication was just like that. And I could speak to Silviu pretty well, but I also felt a little bit insecure if I didn't have that key relationship that I could really trust, and Mark was that for me. So in that particular instance, that was a way we addressed that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of the things that I've tried to do when I'm working in another country is just be aware as much as I can of the culture, and like pay scales are different in different countries, stuff like that. And a solution that I might try to solve just throwing some money at it, that can be a very different thing in that culture. I might think, oh, I can solve this for $200. And then you remember that you may be paying that person $200-300 for the week or the month or whatever it is. And it's just trying to be aware as well of what you're communicating as you work through it all, just being sensitive to the culture, stuff like that. And I guess what I'm hearing a lot of is just having humility really helps across the board with the cultures, with the people, with the workers. Awesome. We have another question. How do you make the story relate to different cultures to impact and increase support for missionaries? Okay.
If the film you're making is designed to be essentially a support film, a fundraising film, then it's likely that the audience for your film is your own culture. So in this particular case, you still will be working in a foreign culture. You still will want to take all those things that Donald was saying as far as respecting the culture. But your primary key persuasion, in the business term, whenever we're doing production for a client, we fill out a thing called a strategic input brief before we start a project, and it just forces us to ask the basic questions. who is our audience, and what is the key persuasion? What's the main thing we're trying to accomplish, and what are the barriers to that? So if we're trying to do a support film to raise money for, whatever, Water for Africa, then our audience is probably not going to be Africans. It's going to be Americans. And therefore, I think whatever creative process you go through, you go ahead and go through that, and you try to be good storytelling, good filmmaking, and everything the whole conference is about. But just remember that at that point, if the support is coming from the West, maybe it's not, I'm not even assuming that, but whatever culture you're trying to design, start with that, figure out what is going to be the most connectable for that culture.
I'll come to that from a different angle in supporting the work of the missionary in that country, and that's exactly my next film that I'm working on. I cannot review too much about it, but I'm actually working with a couple missionary in the country who has a passion to make movies and to use it as a platform for evangelism. So I have to work really hard with the missionary to know what's their aim, what's their purpose, where they're coming from, and does it work with mine, all right? That's very important from the onset. Does the purpose flow together? And if it does, then understanding, working on the story with them, what kind of story they want to tell. And I have an idea of what kind of story I want to tell, and then as we work together, again, they will fill in stuff for me. They have done a lot of research for me, and that's really great, because if not, I have to hire somebody to do the research, but now I have free labor there, right? This couple has been there for a long time, and then it can just point me in the right direction, and I don't have to pay a single dime for it. So that, to me, is valuable. So working with them, and then, of course, in the distribution in that particular country, they have a self-interest. I don't even have to do much about that. So that's a wonderful thing about that.
I would also say, when you have a story and you want this story to be significant or have an impact in a foreign country, just make sure that it transcends into that country. We're talking about missionaries, for example, and immediately the first thing that comes to mind is the American missionary that goes overseas. But the reality is nowadays there are so many missionaries coming out of Latin America and out of Africa, going to all of these different places, that it is a different reality. So I would take into consideration those aspects. Also, people from other countries don't like or are a little tired of the image of always the Americans coming to save the world. So that would be another thing to keep in mind. Always, keep in mind the culture, keep in mind the people, keep in mind their mentality, because they have a different approach. If you wanna, excuse me, in your casting, have people, that represents the other country, and don't make them always the servants or no, if not the lead, but have considerable roles, important parts in your story, significant contributions in your storyline, in your theme. And that creates a bond with the culture. So that would be my suggestion.
Great answers. All right, what's our next question here? Okay, how can you ensure that you get talent with legitimate accents?
Find local actors that legitimately live there. No, obviously, obviously, it's best if you can find an actor that it's originally from that place, because you would not only get the accent, but also a little bit of the attitude and the mindset and all of that. However, if you're limited and you need to find locally, I would try to find or research, if not somebody who's not from the place, at least somebody who has been there and has had some experience and also has had some training in that specific accent you're looking for.
I think if you came to this seminar today, maybe you have either an idea of shooting in a foreign country or you've been to a foreign country. This is maybe the most important thing. You could probably create, whatever, Beirut in Arizona if you needed to, but you can't probably find a bunch of actors. Now, I did have one of you yesterday who did her best Hebrew accent for me. She might even be in here. It was really good. But it's tough. But if you are casting, you're in Syria, and we do that all the time. The other question that I think is sort of under this question is, what language should your film be in? Does it have to be in English with a Syrian accent, or do you do it in Arabic and you subtitle it? And that's a really important discussion. What do you think of subtitles as moviegoers? Can I just ask you, are you cool with subtitles? Raise your hand if you're cool with subtitles. Of course, a bunch of filmmakers are going to say yes. As a cinematographer, as a director, as a writer, I would say yes if anybody. But truthfully, I like to see the picture, and when there's a subtitle up there, I'm looking at the subtitle. And if I've worked so hard to craft these images, I really feel like there's something lost. Now, I'm not against subtitles. We have used them plenty. But it's a discussion to have at the front end of your film. So just a brief story. With the last 2 movies that we filmed in Romania, we had this discussion. And it seemed silly to me to do the whole movie in English when German soldiers, Russian soldiers, Romanian people wouldn't have spoken. I also didn't want to do the whole movie in subtitles. And so I just compromised. And some characters speak in their native language, and we subtitle it. And we said, well, since Richard and Sabina Wormbrand spoke English, any scenes with them and their family, they would speak in English. Because they were Romanian actors, the accent was an issue. But what language it was. Now, even in casting, I didn't want to. There are some fantastic actors in Bucharest who do not speak English. I wanted to meet them. And so they got the roles of the Russian commandant or the Germans. So in that movie, there's 3 or 4 different languages that go. Some of it is subtitled. And what's fun for me is I'll ask people sometimes who just saw the film, hey, by the way, they're just coming out of the theater. If I were to ask you, was that film in English or was it subtitled? Their answer was, I don't know. I can't remember. And I felt like that was the perfect answer. So that's what we've done. We've blended the two.
I guess I can do a pitch on my workshop tomorrow. I'm doing a session on lip sync dubbing. So I've been doing that for 30 years, how to lip sync dub so that they look like they speak the language. But in answering that question also, it's interesting that to me, going to the country to do casting is important. If you do a casting here, all right, you get the native, let's say Mongolian or Romanian or whatever, they will speak with an American accent. All right, so it's pretty. You probably will not notice it, but as a foreigner, we immediately catch it. Right. One good example is when we were casting this little girl in Mongolia. She's 9 years old. She looked like she's 6, but she's 9 or 10. And she speaks really good American English. Too perfect. So much so that we had to pull her down, And then she said, but that's not the correct way it's spoken, And we're like, no, that's the way Mongolians speak it, right? And then on the other hand, I cannot be the dialect coach for the Mongolians because some of them has a hard time pronouncing certain words. So I had to get an American to do the dialect coach because most of our actors are in a way speaking American pronunciation. Because I speak British pronunciation. I have to work very hard to make you guys understand me right now, right? By speaking American pronunciation. If I go native, exactly, yeah. If I go native, you would be lost.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Exactly. So being in the there and letting them help you with casting, and then making sure that you have a dialect coach that is able to coach them, and not yourself. If you're going to the UK and then you try to dialect coach them, not a good idea.
And I would add, I think one of the great things that we've seen with Netflix in the last few years is they've really opened the spectrum. Before, it was very difficult for American audiences to watch anything dubbed or subtitled in another language. Now with huge series and things that they're doing, it's really gotten a lot more popular, and people don't mind as much watching a foreign film dubbed or a foreign series dubbed or subtitled. So I would really consider that. Maybe if we would have spoken 5 or 10 years ago, we would have all said, oh, no, stick to English, because especially if you're going to do a theatrical or something, or like that, people will not watch a film that it's not in English. I think now it's growing, and things are changing a lot. You know, with the Hispanic audience, for example, now you see a lot of your AMCs and Cinemarks doing showings of Spanish dub versions or subtitle versions of your Spider-Mans and your Marvel films and all that because of the large Hispanic population. So I would definitely consider that. And one more thing, I mean, this is a crazy idea we just did. We just finished a film in Mexico City. Julio here was our director, and we came up with this crazy idea. We had bilingual cast, and we filmed the movie in English and in Spanish. I don't know if that's been done before or not. Maybe it has.
That's a great idea.
But we had, you know, we would do a scene, well, a shot in Spanish, and then we would switch to English. So, you know, we're going to end up with two different movies.
Which version is better?
The what?
Which version is better?
I don't know. I'll tell you when we finish editing.
I love that. That's a great idea. First of all, he said dialect coach. I would have almost, I know some of you are actors, probably a number of you are actors, and I agree with Donald. I didn't want to be the dialect coach. I almost feel like it's like teaching kindergarten, and it feels so rudimentary, and I almost thought it was disrespectful. I was dead wrong. Actors really appreciated time with a dialect coach if English was their second language. And we had a great dialect coach, brother in Christ. It was part dialect coach, part just encouragement, and it was a guy we met either here at ICVM, one of the conferences, and we just thought that would be a cool role. He wasn't full-time at that. He was a missionary in Germany. But that dialect role was really great. And then the other thing I would say, if you're directing a scene in a language you don't speak, how do you do that? So there's something to think about. Maybe you wrote the script and you assume they're saying your lines, but maybe they're not. And so you got to figure that out. It's actually in one way easier than I thought it would be. You can still completely sense if you're directing the pace of the scene and the energy of the scene, and you kind of know if you're on the same page. But I would highly recommend that you've got a script supervisor right next to you whispering in your ear the whole time, this is what he said, this is what he said. Because the actors are known to ad-lib now and again. And I've had some actors that were ad-libbing and they started swearing up a blue streak. And I didn't know that's the way they were doing. And it would have not necessarily been appropriate for the film we were making. So,
yeah, and make sure you have somebody who speaks the language. Check your script. Google Translator does not work, trust me.
Oh, it does
There's
not work.
a ton of
the
films-
syntax is opposite most of the time.
I mean, there's a ton of huge Hollywood movies, and then you suddenly see the Hispanic actor or the Latin actor come and say a few lines, and you go, why is he saying? You know, that doesn't make any sense. So make sure you have somebody who speaks the language, who understands, and not literally translate, but contextually translate, so that you have, you know, more accurately what you want to share.
I've seen many movies, Hollywood movies, blockbuster, huge movie, and they have some Chinese cast, and then they're supposed to be speaking Mandarin, but they're speaking Cantonese. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who in the world is, you know? But so also about dialect coaching, as a director, be very careful about talking lines with your actors, because, you know, when if you're trying to get something out of them, you might go in and say, and you deliver it for them, but then you've changed their accent while you are trying to deliver it for them. So make sure that you still continue working with a dialect coach and don't go in and start pronouncing it the way I would pronounce it and not the way an American would pronounce it. So
this is just reminding me of so many things. Here's another thing, is if your actors are speaking English and it's not their first language and they've worked with a dialect coach and they're comfortable, and then for whatever reason you get the bright idea that you're going to change a line at the last minute, or worse, your executive producer decides that they are going to tell you to change a line at the last minute, which you don't like in your own spirit. All right, you say, whatever, you say, hey, we're gonna do this, and you now give a new line to an actor on set, and you're not realizing how much time and preparation they've put into getting that dialect. That is really inconsiderate. So tell your executive producer no, or get it to me early. Good luck with that. But yeah.
Or pretend to do it.
Or pretend to do it. They don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next question, it's a popular one. What's the first resource you use to find information you need about visas and permits and the like?
An easy way is just to check with the airline. You know, most airlines have all current information about which countries you need visas for. And as a matter of fact, you know, airlines like United Airlines, they've got a traveler section where you put in your nationality, the country that you're traveling, and it'll tell you, you know, documents on, you know, on that sense, if you need visas or not. And then if you are going to work in that country, which that can get very, very tricky, a lot of countries may require a special working permit, especially if you're going to work for a foreign company and get paid for the foreign company. If you know, if not, if you're working for you know, let's say an American company that is doing work, then you might not need a working permit. But that would certainly be something you would want to research before you head that way.
And for sure, go into the country's embassy website. You will find all the information you will need on the embassy website. And I would highly recommend that you don't say you're going to that country to shoot a movie. Highly recommend that. Okay, agree?
Yeah, it's going to depend a lot on each country, right? Because there's some countries where there's
if
a
you
whole
go to
system
UK, you
for
don't
it.
have to worry about
There's
it.
other countries where it's just kind of like, yeah, we don't want you doing that here. So you're just going to have to probably use some discretion there. Also, talk with people that are local to that area that might have information for you.
My answer is a lot easier than these guys. What's the first resource I go to? Her name's Judy, and she sits right there, and I just ask her. And then she takes care of it. So you guys might want to meet Judy. She's very good at these kind of things. It's really very easy.
All right.
Can I
yes.
add to that?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised bringing money into the country. This is not part of the question, but it's really important. How you bring money into that country, you need to do research. Because you think you can wire money, and you know, you might wire it and then see 3 months later. Right? So how do you do that? You have to do your research. Like for us, I just had all our crew members carry cash in. Remember that? I wired the money to him and then he carried, every one of them carried some amount of cash
So
in.
again, just, yeah, depending on the country and figure it out, do your research there. Okay, next question. Other than locations, what are some reasons you would choose to film overseas and not in your native country?
Well, this is sort of what I think is the positive side. Other than all these difficulties, how we get money in, or if you need a carnet, and this is the beautiful question. And man, I don't think this was ever something that I decided out of any wisdom. It's just so happened that we've done a lot of projects in other countries. And I don't want to say other than locations because everything looks great. There might be a fantastic film incentive in Oklahoma, nothing against Oklahoma, but it's tough to make a fantastic drama in Oklahoma because it looks like Oklahoma. I guess that's disrespectful. But if you're shooting in, you know, Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings, everything. So there is this incredible production value that comes wherever you go. So that is, I don't want to overlook the locations aspect. But there are others. If all these things we've been talking about, accents and quality of people, when I'm on a film in a foreign country, I have fewer distractions in my life. I'm there with one goal, and I'm all in, and that feels really good on a film because you better be all in. You know, you just directed a film, man. You don't have a lot of room in your mind to be taking care of the 16 other things that will come to you in your own office. Being in a foreign film country focuses your mind. It helps the look of your project, and frankly, the dollar goes farther. In most places, not everywhere maybe, but the dollar will go farther. And if you want to put that production value on the screen, if you can have that money to now invest in more days of shooting or however you want to spend it, those are very, very practical advantages, and I'm committed to it going forward.
So I guess that question to me is a little strange because my native country is not America. So shooting in America is a foreign country to me. You got my drift, right? So, but I will speak as if US is my native country, although I'm a proud Singaporean, so that has to go on film, just to... and I forgot what I wanted to say. All right, yeah. I gotta skip me for a while, I gotta gather my thoughts.
Well, I think a lot of these questions are going to be very project specific, right? It just depends on the project and how you're approaching it.
I remember what I wanted to say. Now, for me, we are we are very mission focused. So to shoot in a foreign country is our heartbeat. So for us, even America, the reason why we came to America, my wife and I, to make movies is because America is a mission country. It needs that. But we love doing things outside of America, pretty much in the Far East or Middle East, that area. So thinking in missions is our heartbeat, and that's why we are doing it there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, the other thing other than location has to do with your story. If your story happens overseas, or the culture of your story or anything like that, then it would make sense to go over there. And I think the other big reason is also the dollar. The dollar goes farther in a lot of these countries. A lot of things are more accessible. However, you still have to travel there. So, and if you're going to bring your actors, so you just need to, figure out the logistics of that.
Mm-hmm. If you haven't done this, if some of you in the room, probably a lot of you have, I don't know, but if you haven't, Judy, we've probably filmed in over 30 countries now. I mean, it's been a lot. We've done, and I just want to say, yes, it's really important to take care of these housekeeping details. You can get yourself in a problem if they need a carnet and you don't have a carnet. If you get in trouble because you wired your, but once you're there, you're just there. You're not in a foreign place anymore. You're in the place where you are, and you're working with a team that you are. And if you haven't, or if you're at all nervous about, wow, we would love to shoot this film, but it takes place in Ghana. I've never been to Ghana. I bet all of us would just say, man, just do it, and pay attention to whatever you need to handle your logistics. But it doesn't feel like you're in a foreign place once you're working. You're in that place, and you're with your team and with your crew. And if you're, I don't know how to say that other than I'm just encouraging, if you come to this workshop and you're considering it, to not be afraid of it, to embrace it, to go there, give yourself a time to pre-produce, go to it. Don't expect it's all going to happen in one trip. It does cost some money to travel. It costs more money to not know what you're doing. So go on a pre-production trip, meet your partners, build the relationship, come up with a list of what has to be done and what timeline. Let them start doing it, go home, and then go back again 10 weeks later, and now meet who they've lined up. They want now to introduce, because you're their friends now. They'll introduce you to the best people in the country, the best locations in the country, the casting. 2 trips, I think, is not a must, but I highly recommend it, and go for it. I wanted to come to this panel to encourage people to have these experiences.
Yeah, and also, if you've realized in the last few years, probably the last 5 years or so, foreign-produced film, I don't want to call it foreign films, but foreign-produced films has very wide acceptability in America nowadays. And it has a flavor of, difference, a unique flavor against just making film in Oklahoma City, right? Okay, I've never done it there, so I'm not going to do it there anymore since you said it's bad. But
Incentives are great, though.
okay, so, incentives are great?
In Oklahoma.
All right, you're talking to a Chinese. Okay. So anyway, consider that because it adds a special flavor to your film. It adds, like they say, your production value just because you shot it overseas and not in Oklahoma.
All right, let's see how we're doing here. We've got about 20 more minutes, so let's see what we can do here. All right, the next question says, what ratio of crew do you hire that is local to the country versus bringing with you? Which positions do you fill with each group? And we've talked about that a little bit already, right? Like some of the key positions.
That's a really great question. Obviously, the scale of the project, there's a lot of variability, but I do believe in a combo pack. We tend to bring a lot of our own, we bring our own cameras, we bring our own audio equipment, we bring our own lenses. So you can rent those things everywhere in the world, but I already know that my packages work together, and I just feel more confident bringing my own set of cameras. So I need a certain number of people to carry that on the plane. Like Judy and I have tried to get home before with 28 bags. Airlines don't like us. So I tend to I'll often bring a DP. I'll often bring my audio remixer engineer. I'll often bring 1 or 2 people on top of that to do DIT, to help carry. So maybe we'll go with as few as 5 or 6. Maybe we'll go with 9 to 12. And then we'll hire everybody else in the region. And that can be anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen to 100, depending on the size of the screen. But so anyway, for us, this isn't a rule of thumb. I don't even know if there's a rule, but that's how we have done it. We travel with a small group, a lot of our own key gear, lenses, cameras, audio equipment, and then everything else comes local.
And I do it. I talk too much. So I agree with John. We also, DP brings their own gear and the sound guy bring their own gear, but I do it slightly differently in terms of crew because I have a special reason also for doing it in a foreign country, and that is because we do a lot of training. So while we are there, we bring our principal heads of department from here, then we go to the country, and then we hire locals who are interns, but we don't treat them as interns. We treat them as crew members, so they are paid. They don't work for free. Because please, if I have to say this, one thing for you to remember is do not go to a country and expect free labor. Because most of the time you go to a country where I'm making the assumption where their economy is poor, and these people are, hand to mouth, and then we want them to work for free. No, that's not right. All of us are salaried. Give them a base salary at least, because you are covering their housing, their, all their costs. But give them a base salary and find out what the base salary is, and then give it to them. And at the same time, that's what we do, and then we are training them. That's why we are using local interns, and each head of department are in a way missionaries. They go there, live with them for 5 weeks, train them at the whole time with me, and then when we leave there, there's a crew of people that can continue where we left off.
Yeah, I would say it depends a lot on the country that you're traveling. There's a lot of countries, for example, in Latin America that have a huge, huge film industry. Countries like Brazil or Mexico or Argentina, you can pretty much find anything you need over there with regards to equipment or technicians or everything. So, in my experience, when we film in Argentina or in Mexico, we rent everything there, we hire all the crew over there, and we only bring maybe our DP and our director. And especially if we're going to work with local talent, which has been the case for us on both films. But then the easiest way is find a good local production company that can take care of all of that. So that way you're only dealing with one person, the director of that production company. You're talking to him, and he's arranging everything much like you said. So that takes a lot of weight off your back. And he knows the place. He'll be able to get the permits, the locations, find the best team, and you just bring your key people to work with.
That's the most important relationship in any foreign production, and then that's the first thing we look for is who's our partner, where we're going. We have to do some filming now in 2 different countries coming up this fall that I've never even been to. One's Colombia. Maybe you can help me in Colombia, because I want to find that production partner. One is Nepal. So we'll put all this to the test ourselves. And in some places, like you say, they're really, really well staffed. There's great equipment. In some places, there's not. We did a shoot last year in Uganda, and we found a fantastic crew. We had a great shoot. Everything went really, really well. When we were all wrapped and done, it was a beautiful time. And they said to us, it's really hard for us to get gear here. We can't just call B&H Photo, order it on, and we don't have addresses even, their houses. And they said, is there any way you can leave behind some of your gear? And so Judy said, absolutely. Tell us what you want. And they wanted all our wireless mics. They wanted our wireless, that stuff that moves the picture around. We made a big list. And she just went on. She found very fair, like we didn't give it to them for free, but we didn't charge them anything above. And they were just thrilled to have us leave with them the stuff that they couldn't get themselves, and we had to come and backfill all that, and it was a little bit of effort, but they were so blessed by it. Now, when we want to go back to Uganda, we have friends. Now, you would not need to do that, obviously, in Argentina and Mexico City, but it turned out in Kampala that was super helpful.
Oh, we had a pretty unique experience in Mongolia, and that was we were trying to rent equipment. Remember that, David? and I found out that there was only like 2 production houses that rent out equipment, and because there was not many, so the premium was high. So like what John said, we have a co-producer in Mongolia. It's always important to make sure you have a co-producer and that you trust him. And this guy suddenly, one day just messaged me and says, I found a place in China we can buy all this stuff from for the same price as renting for the number of weeks in Mongolia. And I went, great. Then now I can buy the equipment, the budget is there, and then I can leave the equipment with the Mongolians. Win-win situation. Yeah, we didn't charge them, we just left all the grip gear there. It was just wonderful. So do that research, you might be surprised, hey, I can buy that for the same price as renting, and then you bless the people there. You know.
Awesome.
That's great.
All right. How do you promote unity as a body of Christ and artistically with 2 different cultures at play on set? And I'm going to start with this one, and you guys can go, but I will say the body of Christ is universal. It's not tied to a culture. One of the coolest things I've experienced in other countries working with believers is that as soon as you start praying together, there's a connection and a bond there that transcends cultural barriers. Doesn't mean you don't need to be aware of those things, but I just wanted to make that note, and I'll let them answer the question, but it's just a really, 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 really amazing feeling when you realize that you are brothers and sisters in Christ, and that it's the same God, it's the same Lord that we serve, even if you can't communicate in the same language or you don't understand all the other variables.
I think one of the things as Americans that we need to be aware of is that there's a lot of respect for America when you go to a country. I mean, there's a lot of dislike too, but when you're doing an art like filmmaking, they be very careful because they put you on a pedestal that we should not deserve, right? And therefore, they sometimes give us too much respect, and it elevates us, and over a number of times, our head kind of get a bit big, which is very unhealthy, so we have to watch that. I'm going to work in a country where there's actually not just 2 cultures, it'll be 3 cultures, right? Because that country itself has 2 cultures, and they don't get along with each other, and my goal is to make sure they get along. That's my goal. They will not have any problem with the crew that I bring with me to America because we are their teacher in a way. But they will have problem among themselves, which is the greatest challenge for me. But I'm up for the challenge.
I'll tell you a story because they show it to us. You know, it's mutual. I was just talking about this shoot in Uganda, and one night, the first assistant director, a guy named Sharp, who we had hired through a production co-producer and that team, but we didn't know there were no religious questions, put it that way, when we're getting resumes as to who's going to fill. It's just who we get. But driving around in the car as we're scouting, I'm realizing, man, Sharp is a really cool Christian guy, and we really have a lot in common. And one day, halfway through the shoot, Sharp comes to me and he points and he says, is that guy right there, one of the guys I brought, is that guy a brother in Christ? I'm like, Kyler, yeah, man. That's why he's here. He was my Steadicam op, and we brought him in from San Diego, and his Bible is open every breakfast. Kyler's young. I've known him since he was born. I said, yeah, he is. And Sharp says to me, I think I have a word from the Lord for him. You think tonight you could arrange that we could get together? I've never had a first AD say anything like that before. I said, well, yeah, absolutely, man. That's what we do. So that night, under the mango tree, after everyone was done with dinner, I say, hey, Kyler, you got a minute? And Sharp said, I kind of set it up, and we stood there. And Sharp says to him, I just felt like I had a word from the Lord for you, Kyler. And he said, it's this. The Lord says you've been through a period in your life of productive pain, and that period is over. Now, he didn't know. Kyler was a D1 soccer player, full scholarship to Liberty, who on a mission trip to Guatemala had come down with Lyme's disease and had spent over a year in the hospital, had lost his eyesight, had just gotten married, was recovered, but was living in chronic pain. But Kyler would never say a word about it. He is the most, he's just a stalwart, hard worker. Sharp didn't know any of that. He says to Kyler that night on the mango tree, this is the word of the Lord. Kyler says, wow, beautiful, man. He wrote it down, and we prayed together, and there was no lightning, and he didn't fall on the ground, and there was no ooey gooey honey drop. It was nothing, but I'm like, hey, whatever that was a neat moment of brothers. So I just kind of forgot about that, to be honest. And 4 months later, Kyler's mom, who's from our town, comes over to our house because she was asking if her parents could stay in our house. And as she comes in, it was great to see Marlis again. She's an old friend. And she says, isn't it beautiful what happened in Uganda? And I'm like, yeah, it was great. And she said, no, it was really, really beautiful what happened with Kyler. Yeah, I love working with your son, and he's so wonderful. It's like, no, like, what happened? Like, what are you talking about? And she says, didn't he tell you that from that night forward, he has had no pain? And I said, I'm Thomas. Marlis, I trust you, but until I hear this from Kyler. Kyler was in town a couple weeks later. I said, come for me with a walk. And I said, your mom said this is, and he says, it's true. Since that night and I just saw his bride and Kyler right before we came here. The pain has not returned. So there was unity in the body thanks to Sharp coming back to us and God's presence. Undeniable. Undeniable.
I would answer this question with one word: respect. If you got a crew of Christians, respect them. That means they may worship different than you, they may obey God different than the way you do. Respect them. Don't try to convince them, don't try to change them. That's God's work, not ours. If you're working with people that are not believers, do the same thing. Respect them. Treat them with dignity. Don't yell, don't scream, just treat them with respect. In our last movie, when we were in Mexico, we were working, most of the crew were not believers. And at the end of the day, they would all come and tell us, we've never been treated like this. Every time we work with other directors and producers, it's always screaming and bad words and insults and we've never been treated like this. And that respect sometimes speaks the gospel louder than our words. So that would be my suggestion: respect.
But that doesn't mean that you accept mediocrity, right? There's a difference, right? Respect and mediocrity. So we have fired people. Just because I'm a Christian and I'm a missionary doesn't mean I cannot fire you, right? So, but however,
we did too. We just fired them with respect.
Right.
But we.
Yeah, I was going to say that we paid them. We paid them, and then we fired them. We didn't say fire them. We just let them go. But we paid them, so.
All right. Let's see. We can probably get through 2 more questions, maybe. All right. How do you account for changing exchange rates that may impact your budget as you are in production? That sounds like a single answer one. Anybody want to grab that one?
Make sure you have contingency. It's very important. Exchange rate fluctuate, so I would, if you're budgeting, I would put a 5% buffer for exchange rate just in case. Like right now, American dollar is really great. Okay, if you budget right now and you're going to shoot next year and everything become back normal, American dollar is going to go down, and you will be in trouble. So don't budget current, budget norm.
Great. All right, let's see the next question. We might get 2 or 3 if they're quick ones. All right. Do you have any tips for making a film that works well for audiences of 2 different languages and cultures? And obviously we heard about one way to go about that, but.
Yeah, one of them obviously, the bilingual, but also, I would say depending on the culture, again, make it suitable, understand what those people are, how they think, what they believe, and then try to make it suitable for both of them. From the script, obviously, to the filmmaking, your casting and everything.
I was doing a music video with Keith Getty. We were in Northern Ireland, and I was just making conversation, and Keith Getty wrote with Stuart Townsend "In Christ Alone," one of the most popular worldwide hymns to come in the last 30 years. And so just out of sort of simple, dumb conversations, like, Keith, what? I asked that question about songwriting. How do you write a song that really sticks, and really? He says to me, well, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't tell you. how do you make a film that works for audiences of one language? You know, that's what this whole festival is about. Two languages. I've got a comedy that I've written that is designed to appeal to Europeans, Americans, and Asians. Good luck with that. You know, I'm going to have you talk to this. We'll see. I don't know that there's a great answer to that question. I just think you better take advantage of every filmmaking craft, every storytelling craft. Just make excellence, and then talk to Arturo, I guess.
I thought you were going to give the answer because I have no answer for that one. But one thing I do want to say is comedy don't transcend culture, all right? You find something funny in your culture, it doesn't work in a different culture. And it'll be interesting how it's translated even.
Just to repeat
Thanks
one thing that was said earlier in this session, though, there are some things that are transcendent, right? So it may play out in different ways, but people will still be able to relate to certain elements. So as much as you can stick to those core pieces, it's probably going to make it work a little bit better.
The gospel.
Yes. All right, we have another question. We've got a little bit more time. I want to bring my film to this beautiful country. What steps should I do to project my movie in theaters?
Here's an expert.
So if I understand correctly, somebody did a foreign film and wants to release it theatrically in the U.S.
That would be my understanding.
Yeah, I mean the obvious answer is, well, find a distributor that will, you know, distribute your film. You know, that normally that's the way to do it. The distributor is the guy who knows how to do all of that part. Try to do it yourself. It's very hard. However, that's how we did it. And you know, tomorrow morning I'll share a little bit about how God did all of that when we started the distribution company. But normally, I mean, I would say that, you know, find a distributor that loves your movie and then kind of go from there.
Great. And attend the sessions tomorrow. We have 2 marketing sessions, and so that'll be good. Okay, next question. We still have some time. All right, how possible is it to distribute an American-made Christian film in foreign markets, and what is the best way to pursue that option?
Well, it is very possible. You know, like I said at the beginning, we've distributed several Christian films, you know, some of the Kendricks among others, into foreign countries. The best way to pursue that, it would be this you know, the same way, find a distributor and then, you know, distribute the film. It's a long process and it is very costly. So as a distributor, you know, when we evaluate films for distribution, we want to make sure that the film will work, you know, and like you said, we don't know the answer, but, you know, based on our experience, we'll try to guess, you know, the best, because there's a lot of money to put in to distribute a film internationally.
Yeah.
You know, beginning with, obviously we need to dub the film into the language of the country that it's being distributed, then market the film in each respective country, and so forth. But yeah, it is possible, and it is proven that Christians in other countries like American films. You know, War Room has been a huge hit, you know, all over Latin America, for example. You know, of course, that was successful here, but you take a film like The Remaining. How many have seen or heard about The Remaining? Exactly. Oh, one. The Remaining was a horror Christian film released by Sony several years ago, and it did not work in the United States. We released it in Latin America, and it's among our top box office grossing Christian films in Latin America. So, you know, again, it all depends, and we don't pretend to know it all, but we know our audience. We have experience in you know, talking and listening what the Christian audience in Latin America wants, and based on that, we'll choose a film to distribute down there.
Yeah. As a producer and a director, I would encourage you not to distribute the film yourself because you're too eager to get your film out. So getting a good distributor is worth their weight in gold, but try to get somebody who's not too big because their weight in gold is more expensive. So, I'm talking facetiously, but so getting the film, mean, getting a good distributor is really important. Like, one of our distributor got our film on Air China. I don't know how he got it on Air China. That's China's national carrier. And then another one got it on Lufthansa. I'm like, how in the world he got it on Lufthansa? I still don't know how.
That's great.
I'll also just mention a great way to find what you're looking for if you're not sure how to make the connection is to try to look one step over to another project that might be similar to yours that was distributed in another country. Talk to them, see what their experience was, who they went with, who they worked with, how they did it, because you can learn a lot if you can find a similar project that's at the scope and scale of your project. That might help you, make some connections and build some bridges. And that applies across the board. Like, if you're looking for a crew position or if you're looking into any number of things, if you'll find what you're looking for that someone else has figured out, maybe they might share something with you. So, did you have anything else? All right, we have 3 minutes left. We'll read this question and we'll try to answer it and give any closing thoughts that you guys might have. So we'll pick one person to answer this. Best resources to recommend for beginners wanting to get plugged in and network with people in foreign films. Any thoughts, anyone?
You said pick one person.
This came to mind. I went to a conference in London a few years ago called the Focus Film Network. It wasn't exactly the answer to this question, but the film commissions from many, many countries around the world, states, were all there in one place. And I just wandered around and took the brochures and talked to people. So I didn't really realize at the time how valuable that experience was. So there might be another episode of the Focus Film Network, and you would see people from every country, every film commission, and it would be a great clearinghouse to go to if you might find yourself in foreign countries.
And we have a lot of foreign films here this week that have been foreign produced or that are marketed there. So talk with those people, make connections, definitely. Any final thoughts that you guys would want to give just in general to this topic?
Keep your passport up to date, okay? This is practical. Check it. In fact, I would recommend you look at it today because it's probably already expired. I know this from terrible experience myself where I ended up directing a shoot in Greece from a hotel room in New York one time. So yeah, keep your passport up to date. Can't top that.
Donald, you had some advice that you were sharing earlier as we were preparing for this, just about who you take with you.
Yes. This is really important, especially I think when you go to a foreign country, bring your spouse along if you're married. If you're not married, you can find a spouse there probably. But bring your spouse along because as a producer and a director, your status somehow seems elevated. I mean, people give us more respect than we deserve. And like it or not, as a man, you will get unwanted attention from women. So bringing your spouse with you, if you're going to be gone for weeks or months, it's really important. And plus there's another thing like John was saying earlier, when your relationship with your spouse is good, you are also sharing and telling them something, right?
You'll probably need that backup anyway. When you've got a lot of people that you don't know, a lot of situations, I think it's great advice.
Yeah. And the wives has a unique sixth sense that they pick up that men don't pick up.
Anything that you would share?
Yeah, I would just encourage you guys. It's traveling to other countries and doing foreign films. It's an exciting adventure. Just make sure you have a partner in the country, but do it, and God will do. I mean, God obviously works, and no matter what we do, He's constantly working in our lives and changing. But traveling to another country and being in a completely different environment God speaks to you in a very personal and different way when you're away from all those distractions. And He can do some awesome things. So if you're planning on doing that, I encourage you to do it. If there's anything we can do to help you guys or lead you or direct you, we'll be more than glad to do. Well, I speak for myself, but I'm sure they will. We all have the same willingness to help and support each other. So we're here to serve, and please know that.
And I'll just give you two closing thoughts as well. One is make sure that you're doing what God is calling you to do, and be prepared. So don't say, well, because God is calling me to do this, I'm just going to go and we'll just see what happens. I mean, you might get over there and you might see what happens. It might not be what you want to happen. So just realize that, you're going into a different country. Make sure you're prepared. Do as much homework as you can. Try to find those local connections. Try to make sure that, you have the funding you need to be able to do what you need to do. And seek God. Make sure that's what, He's leading you to do. Because the last thing you want to do anywhere, here or in another country, is be going down the wrong path and putting a whole lot of effort and part of your life into something that's, might not work out the way we want it to. So thank you so much, each of you, for spending your time here today. I thought it was extremely educational and helpful, and I look forward to the next projects that they do and that each of you do, wherever you do them.